The global conversation right now about AI, about tech innovation, it's almost always framed as a race, isn't it?
It is. Who's fastest, who's biggest?
But what if the real story isn't about speed, but about, I don't know, sustainability? Today, we are diving deep into this massive cultural contrast that's shaping the future of technology.
We're looking at the intense, almost frantic hustle of Silicon Valley versus the more measured, maybe conservative balance that really defines innovation in Europe.
And we have a perfect lens for this comparison. We're focusing on one person, Steven, a data scientist and content creator who's based in Milan.
Right, and our sources really detail his pivot from a very, very stable world. He spent 12 years in finance. Commercial banking, specifically.
12 years is a long time.
A very long time. He was handling system deployment, project management, both in his home country and abroad. And then he just decided to completely restructure his life.
And that pivot led him to a second master's degree in data science and economics at Milan University, of all places.
And this isn't just about learning new tools. It's about fundamentally changing the whole approach to solving problems.
So he sees his mission as applying AI to these really entrenched business problems, moving away from just pure quantitative modeling into something more imaginative.
Exactly. That's the word he uses. He's driven by this belief that AI adds crucial imagination and creativity. I mean, the core business challenges, efficiency, understanding your market, they're the same as they've always been.
But AI gives you a new language to ask the questions.
A new language to ask and answer them, yeah.
So the core tension here for you to think about is the difference between, say, building a company to get $1 billion valuation in 3 years versus choosing the long, intentional game.
The slow game.
Building a community, creating content, and prioritizing a balanced life over a quick exit. And that's what he's doing with his brand, Shengzi.
Which translates to new wisdom from data.
Yeah. And his podcast, Steven Data Talk. He's using content as his vehicle to bridge this huge gap between the super technical AI knowledge and, well, actual business context.
And his initial focus was very specific, very technical. He was making YouTube tutorials. The series was called Learn by Doing with Steven.
And what was he teaching?
Really advanced stuff. Things like local deployment of large language models, LLMs, and getting into early agent frameworks. He talked a lot about autogen.
Okay, for listeners who might not be deep in the weeds of development, why is focusing on something like autogen significant? What does that signal?
It signals a commitment to the real cutting edge of applied AI. Autogen, for instance, it's a framework that lets you orchestrate multiple AI agents. They sort of talk to each other to solve complex tasks.
So it's like moving beyond a simple chatbot.
Oh, way beyond. It's coordinated AI teamwork. And by teaching local deployment, he's empowering people to use this powerful tech without having to rely on, the huge, expensive cloud providers.
And his own startup ideas seem to reflect this blend of expertise. He was exploring using these AI agents to simulate behavioral economics problems.
Yeah, and you can see his finance background coming through loud and clear. He was looking at predicting how consumer behavior changes after, say, a central bank hikes interest rates.
That's incredibly complex.
It's simulating nuanced human reactions under stress. It's a highly sophisticated application that shows he wants to use AI to refine and accelerate traditional research, not just, build another simple API wrapper.
It sounds so ambitious. Which makes his decision to base all of this in Milan, not San Francisco or London, even more compelling.
It really does. He actually views Europe as an AI hollow, his words, a low ground for AI development right now.
A low ground. That sounds bleak.
And it's a very frank assessment. But he was strategic. He told our sources he chose this difficult environment on purpose. He believes the effort is more meaningful when the infrastructure around you isn't just making it easy.
But he's facing hurdles his U.S. counterparts just don't have to think about.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about those hurdles. The regulatory environment sounds like a complete legal minefield for a startup.
It is. I mean, think about it. A European AI startup has to navigate the old GDPR rules on data and privacy, plus the new, incredibly complex EU AI Act.
And that act introduces all these risk classifications and transparency rules.
Right. And for a small team, just figuring out if your product is high risk can drain immense resources. Steven even joked that while it's tough for startups, it's fantastic for legal job growth across the continent.
So you get this trade-off.
Yeah.
Security and legal complexity over speed and agility. But wait, if Europe is the low ground, couldn't that be a huge opportunity? Less competition could mean Faster market penetration.
Potentially, yes, but the capital constraint is the killer. It just completely counteracts that advantage.
How so?
Steven put it in very stark terms. He compared the planned European public investment in AI compute centers, so buying graphics cards, building data centers, to the investment of just one person in the U.S.
You're talking about Elon Musk.
Exactly. He pointed out that the entire EU's collective investment is less than what Musk is committing individually.
Wow.
That comparison just throws the lack of European venture capital into sharp relief. Without massive, scalable compute power, that early mover advantage it evaporates. You can't train the models you need to compete.
And it's not just capital and regulation, there's the cultural factor. He talks about European tech culture favoring this deep sense of completeness, of craftsmanship, the Jianshin spirit, he calls it.
The Jianshin spirit, yeah. It's all about perfection. Steven sees entrepreneurs who will polish their minimum viable product, their MVP, until it's perfectly good.
Meaning bug-free, beautifully documented.
Overly featured, maybe,
Yeah.
and then they release it. And this is just so fundamentally different from the Silicon Valley mantra.
Get version 1 out the door, get feedback, and iterate at light speed.
Exactly. So in a field where the fundamental models are changing every 3 to 6 months, delaying your launch by 6 months to achieve perfection can be a death sentence.
You miss the feedback window. Your whole tech approach could be obsolete by the time you launch.
And you combine that perfectionism with what Steven calls the relapse pace, the slackness of Italy, and you get an environment with almost no internal aggressive competition.
That sounds like a serious systemic risk. He notes that if European AI fails, foreign companies, US, Chinese cloud providers like AWS, Google Cloud, Alibaba, they'll just come in and monopolize the market.
Because the native solutions just can't keep up on speed or scale, it's a fundamental threat to Europe's technological sovereignty. You start relying on foreign infrastructure for your core AI.
You're relying on their rules, their data standards, their pricing.
Everything.
Okay, so let's shift focus across the Atlantic to the very environment Steven chose to avoid, Silicon Valley. We've seen these huge structural contractions recently. Layoffs at Meta, Amazon.
A lot of places. And Andy Jassy at Amazon was very explicit about it. He directly linked the efficiency gains from AI to the need for a smaller workforce in the coming years.
This feels different from a typical recession layoff.
It is different. It's not cyclical, it's structural. We heard about people with outstanding performance reviews getting let go, people who were brilliant, but their roles were suddenly seen as misaligned with the new strategy.
A strategy focused on efficiency and immediate productization.
It points to this deep logical shift from the pandemic boom of, massive, sometimes unfocused hiring and pure research.
To a laser focus on cost reduction and quantifiable results from applied AI. It's not enough to just be brilliant anymore.
You have to be strategically efficient. And that drive is amplified by this relentless pace that Steven observed. He captures it perfectly with this idea of the duck effect.
Right, the image of the duck gliding elegantly on the water.
Looking totally effortless, but underneath, its feet are just paddling frantically nonstop.
So what are those frantic feet paddling for in the AI world? Is it just about the money?
He says it's deeper than money. He described it as competing for a sense of existence.
A sense of existence.
Yeah. In Silicon Valley, you are constantly validating your right to be there. You're competing to get on TechCrunch, to secure that next round from a top-tier VC, to exit with a huge valuation before the market shifts from under you.
And this AI wave has just turned up the volume on that anxiety.
Massively. The fear of missing out on the next model iteration, the next big venture, it creates this relentless pressure and ultimately burnout.
And when you frame it like that, with that immense existence-driven pressure, Steven's choice of content medium podcasting feels so deliberate, it ties right back to that desire for balance and longevity.
It really does. He chose audio over text platforms like Substack because he finds writing tedious. For him, conversation is just the most direct, authentic way to communicate.
So podcasting for him isn't a hustle to become a millionaire next year.
Not at all. He sees it as a way to find kindred spirits. He calls it a lifelong career that he can continue even in retirement. It's about creating content that's built for impact and for longevity.
Preserving deep thinking on things like philosophy, humanity, isolation.
Which is such a contrast, isn't it? Podcasting as this medium that preserves deep thought, while the prevailing culture demands sound bites and quick results.
So who influences his approach to this kind of deep, long-form content?
He mentioned Lex Fridman as a major influence, and he pointed specifically to the incredible preparation Fridman does, researching guests' books, spanning science and philosophy, connecting with these huge figures.
And Steven is applying that same commitment to the fundamentals of business, not just the tech.
That's right. He's diligently analyzing old Y Combinator course material. I'm talking of content that's a decade old.
Why?
Because he believes the foundational business logic of how you start a company that's evergreen. The technology around it might change 3 times over, but the core principles remain.
That kind of persistence is so rare. But he offered a reality check that really speaks to the patience this long game requires.
Ah, yes. He noted that probably fewer than 5% of people who start watching those foundational YC lectures actually finish them.
5%.
It just highlights this massive barrier to entry for deep knowledge, you know? Most people want the shortcut. But Steven's whole podcasting strategy is based on the need for persistence, both in consuming and creating content that distills that core, enduring knowledge.
For him, the impact really transcends the commercial side. It's about influencing listeners' life decisions and creating a lasting, meaningful record.
Exactly.
So this brings us back to the central theme. If Silicon Valley is defined by hustle, Steven is defined by balance and his personal definition of freedom.
And his definition is so simple. He just says freedom is letting yourself go.
Letting yourself go.
He believes people need to define their own standards for freedom and just actively avoid the exhaustion that's imposed by what everyone else expects of you.
And he actually practices this. He talks about taking gap time.
He does.
Yeah.
He prioritizes these long vacations, a week or two at a time, to go skiing or hiking in the Alps. It just reflects that deep-seated European cultural priority of work-life balance.
Which is so fascinating, because in the high-pressure U.S. environment, taking a long leave can feel like a professional sin. I know I spent what felt like a decade in a gap, just doing independent study and travel after a very high-pressure corporate career.
And that reconstruction was necessary for you.
It was, but it felt so countercultural. My peers were all just constantly climbing the ladder, you know.
It really does illustrate that difference between working to live and living to work. But Steven isn't just pessimistic about the AI future. He has a very level-headed view of the current hype cycle.
So is he calling it a bubble? Is it about to burst?
Not a complete collapse, no. He sees it more as a cyclic cleaning, an overvaluation correction.
Okay.
The fundamental large-scale AI trend is sound. The technology is real. It's transformative. What's going to be purged are the overvalued models and the companies that are basically just undifferentiated API wrappers with no real product depth.
So it's a cleansing of the hype, not a failure of the tech itself.
Precise.
That's a really sophisticated synthesis. We've explored these two innovation extremes. The relentless, existence-driven competition of Silicon Valley and Europe's more careful, regulated, quality-driven approach. Steven found his mission not by fleeing the conversation, but by choosing to engage from a place of balance rather than burnout.
And his story shows that you can still make meaningful contributions from the low ground as long as you commit to the long game and to developing deep, sustainable content.
We heard today that Steven hopes his epitaph will simply include the word podcaster. That's a powerful statement about the lasting value of persistent, deliberate creation. So if competition in Silicon Valley is defined by competing for a sense of existence, we want to leave you with this final thought drawn from Steven's philosophy. Given the current structural consolidation in the tech world, what non-obvious long-term endeavor like building a community through deep, persistent content are you building today that will guarantee your influence and your intellectual existence decades from now?